Adam Rivers seemed like the perfect example of success in the vibrant, opulent coastal city of Westlake in the western United States. At 38, he was the CEO of one of the region's most renowned tech companies, responsible for innovations that changed how people lived. He lived in a luxurious 3-story mansion, surrounded by glass walls that reflected Westlake's skyline and sunlit beaches. At social events, Adam was always the center of attention, surrounded by influential friends, politicians. From the outside, his life appeared almost perfect. However, this perfection was only a facade. Despite all his success and wealth, Adam carried a deep emptiness within, a void that had shadowed him since childhood. His home, meant to represent an achievement, was, in fact, a mirror of the cold mansion where he grew up. The past had left scars on his soul, and no amount of money or professional recognition could fill the void he felt. Adam grew up lonely. His parents, both successful executives at a multinational company, were always traveling, chasing business opportunities in different parts of the world. While other children had stories of family dinners, park picnics, and warm hugs, Adam had expensive toys, the latest gadgets, and a mansion filled with technology. But there was no human warmth. His childhood passed between the white, spotless walls of an impeccable home, without the presence of those who were supposed to love him. The only person who brought some color to his lonely childhood was Margot. A nanny of humble origin, from a rural village called Riverdale, Margot came into Adam's life when he was 5. She treated him with the care and tenderness that were missing from his life. Margot wasn't just a nanny. She was the only person who genuinely cared about him. She took him to the park, read him bedtime stories, and shared tales of Riverdale, a place where children ran free and families gathered to celebrate community life. It was the complete opposite of the cold mansion where Adam lived. For a few years, Margot was the emotional pillar in Adam's life. He became attached to her in a way he had never bonded with his parents, and she reciprocated with a maternal affection he had never experienced. But this brief period of happiness was abruptly interrupted when Adam was just 8 years old. His parents died in a plane crash during a business trip. The pain was overwhelming, and he felt completely lost. Margot tried to comfort him as best as she could, but just a few weeks after his parents' death, she also left. Her mother, who still lived in Riverdale, had passed away, and Margot had to return to take care of her younger siblings. Margot promised she would come back, but she never did. That final goodbye on a rainy morning was etched into Adam's memory. He watched as the black car taking Margot away disappeared into the horizon, carrying with it the only person who had been an emotional anchor in his life. He was left alone in that enormous house, surrounded by tutors and lawyers, with more toys, but no affection. Decades passed, and the lonely boy became a powerful man. But the emptiness never left him. On the surface, Adam had everything anyone could desire: power, wealth, and status. Yet he knew all of it was an attempt to fill the hole left by Margot and the emotional absence of his parents. He never married, never had children, and despite his numerous professional achievements, he felt that something essential was always missing. In recent years, the search for Margot had intensified. He hired private investigators, followed leads, and scoured every corner of Riverdale, but it seemed Margot had vanished. Every lead led to a dead end, and his frustration grew, until one day, he made a definitive decision. He would go to Riverdale himself. No matter how long it took or how many obstacles he faced, he needed to understand why she never returned, and why, even after all these years, her absence continued to haunt him. On the morning of his departure, Adam took one last look at the stunning view from his mansion in Westlake. The ocean waves crashed against the rocks below, but he barely registered the beauty before him. With a suitcase in hand and a silent determination, Adam prepared for the journey that he hoped would finally lead him to Margot and help him understand what really happened so many years ago. Riverdale was completely different from Westlake. The city where Adam had built his life, with glass skyscrapers, bustling avenues, and the constant sound of waves crashing against cliffs, seemed to belong to another world. While Westlake thrived with technology and modernity, Riverdale was a village almost forgotten by time, nestled between green hills and a slow-moving river in the background. The houses were simple, made of weathered wood, many covered in vines and surrounded by untamed gardens. It was the kind of place where life flowed slowly, where people knew each other and traditions were passed down from generation to generation. As soon as he arrived, Adam was overtaken by a bittersweet nostalgia. He vaguely remembered the stories Margot had told about this place, stories that painted Riverdale as a refuge of simplicity and community, something he had never had. Now, as he walked through the dirt roads, It felt like he was stepping into those stories for the first time, an echo of a past he barely knew. However, there was a certain tension in the air. The village that once seemed like a place of peaceful life was now marked by signs of abandonment. Many houses were closed, some with broken windows, and few people seemed to walk the streets. Adam soon discovered that the local economy had been in decline for years. Most of the young people had left the village in search of opportunities in big cities like Westlake, and those who stayed struggled to keep their families and local businesses alive. As he explored Riverdale, Adam quickly realized that finding Margot would be more difficult than he had imagined. When he asked about her in the few shops and bakeries that were still open, the responses varied. Some people vaguely remembered her, while others said she had left the village years ago. No one seemed to know for sure where Margot was or if she still lived in the area. Tired and frustrated, Adam decided to visit the village's old church, a small, simple building that seemed to be the heart of the community. It was the kind of place where Margot would likely have sought solace during her time there. He entered the church, the sound of the wooden doors echoing through the empty space. The pews were empty, but the smell of lit candles filled the air, and sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows. As he approached the altar, Adam was surprised by a soft voice coming from the back of the church. An elderly woman, fragile in appearance, with a black veil over her head, watched him with curiosity. She introduced herself as Sarah, one of Riverdale's oldest residents. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked, with a disarming kindness in her eyes. Adam hesitated for a moment before answering, "Yes, I'm looking for Margot. She cared for me when I was a child. I've been trying to find her for a long time." The woman's expression changed, as if something old had awakened in her memory. "Margot, I remember her. She was a good woman. She worked hard to take care of her siblings after her mother died. But life here was never easy." Sarah told Adam that after his parents' death, Margot had faced many difficulties in Riverdale. She struggled to support her siblings, and although she was well liked by the community, her financial and emotional situation deteriorated over the years. After a while, she began to isolate herself, Sarah explained. And then one day she just disappeared. Some say she left to try to build a better life elsewhere. Others believe she sought refuge in the hills north of the village, in a house that belonged to her mother. This was the first concrete lead Adam had in years. The hills north of Riverdale were surrounded by dense forest, and few ventured there. "I need to go there," Adam said with determination, already deciding it would be his next stop. But before he left, Sarah called out to him again. "She talked about you sometimes, you know? About the boy she cared for so tenderly. I think Margot never forgot." The old woman's words struck Adam deeply. He had always wondered if Margot thought about him, if her absence had been as painful for her as it had been for him. Now he had his answer. Margot hadn't forgotten, and that rekindled his hope. With his heart stirred by a mix of hope and anxiety, Adam left the small church in Riverdale and headed for the northern hills, where Margot might be. The path was narrow and winding, covered by roots and dense vegetation. The journey would be long and exhausting, but Adam was determined. He had spent years trying to find clues about Margot, and now, being so close, nothing could stop him. As he climbed the trail, the sounds of the village faded, replaced by the gentle sound of wind blowing through the trees and the rustling of fallen leaves. The hills were surrounded by an almost untouched forest, and the feeling of isolation intensified with every step he took. It was an absolute contrast to the life he knew in Westlake, where every move seemed to be watched by cameras, and the constant sound of traffic never ceased. Adam couldn't stop thinking about how his life had become an endless search for something that seemed so simple, human connection. As he climbed the hill, he wondered if finding Margot would really bring him the peace he had long sought. What if she was completely different from the woman he remembered? What if, upon seeing her, he realized that the gaps in his life couldn't be filled by her, or by anyone? The uncertainty loomed over him like a heavy cloud, but his determination never wavered. After hours of walking, he spotted the house Sarah had mentioned. It was an old, small cabin, hidden among the trees, with an unkempt garden surrounding it. The windows were dusty, and the moss-covered roof looked like it was caving in. Adam stopped for a moment, observing the house that seemed to have been swallowed by time. Everything in that scene felt surreal to him. He knocked on the door once, twice, and waited. For a moment, he thought no one would answer, but then the soft sound of footsteps approaching echoed from the other side. When the door slowly opened, an elderly woman appeared on the threshold. Her face was lined with deep wrinkles, and her once dark hair was now gray and thin. Yet her eyes held a familiar sparkle, though they had lost the vigor of youth. For a moment, Margot didn't recognize him. She looked at Adam as if she were seeing a stranger, as someone who hadn't had a visitor in a long time. But when he smiled, the same smile she had seen so many times on an 8-year-old boy, something changed in her gaze. "Adam?" she whispered, her voice trembling and full of disbelief. He nodded, unable to speak, as a wave of emotions took him by surprise. She still remembered him. The reunion was silent, but charged with emotion. Margot invited him inside, and Adam noticed that the cabin was even more modest on the inside. Old furniture, nearly all covered in dust, and an unlit fireplace filled the room. Life in Riverdale had not been kind to her. Adam felt a pang in his chest, seeing the state Margot lived in, a woman who in his childhood represented everything he associated with love and care. Now she seemed broken by life's circumstances. "I never thought I'd see you again," Margot said, her voice heavy with deep melancholy. She sat in an old armchair and gestured for Adam to do the same. "You've grown, you've become a man." For a moment, Adam didn't know what to say. He had dreamed of this moment for so many years, but now that he was here, he couldn't find the words. All he could think about was the pain of her absence, how she had left him alone, and how that had shaped his life. "Why did you never come back?" he finally asked, his voice choked with emotion. The question that had haunted him since he was 8 had finally been spoken. Margot looked at him with sadness. "I wanted to come back, Adam. I swear I did. But when my mother died, I became responsible for my younger siblings. They needed me, and things here were tough. The village began to decline. There was no work, no money. I felt trapped." She sighed and looked at the unlit fireplace. "I thought about you every day. But as time passed, I convinced myself that you were better off without me. With your inheritance and the life your parents left you, I imagined you would find your way. And when I heard about their death, I didn't know how to come back." Adam remained silent, absorbing her words. It all made sense now, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. He had spent his entire life trying to fill the void her absence had left. The truth, however, was that Margot also had her own wounds, and those scars had prevented her from returning to him. But another revelation was yet to come, something Margot had kept secret for years, and that would forever change the way Adam saw his past. The silence between Adam and Margot was heavy, but filled with mutual understanding. There was so much to say, but also a weariness in the words. Margot seemed more fragile now, her voice and posture revealing the weight of years of sacrifices and struggles that had left no room for anything else. Adam was still processing the pain of his own life, but he also felt a deep empathy for the woman now before him, the one who had been a mother figure but who also carried her own losses. Margot took a deep breath, her trembling hands resting on the arm of the worn-out chair, before speaking again. "There's something I never told anyone, Adam. Something I've kept for all these years. I thought I was protecting you, but I think now it's time for you to know the truth about what happened to your parents." Adam felt the air around him freeze. Since the tragic death of his parents, he had believed the official story, a plane crash caused by mechanical failure during a business trip. But Margot's expression told a different story. There was a pain there, a hesitation he didn't recognize, as if she was about to reveal a deep and painful secret. "What do you mean by the truth?" he asked, his voice low but filled with tension. Margot looked away, visibly struggling to find the right words. "Your parents didn't die in an accident, Adam. It was something much worse. They were murdered." Her words seemed impossible to process. Adam remained still, as if the ground beneath his feet was crumbling. He stared at Margot, waiting for her to say she was mistaken, that she had made an error. But her gaze didn't waver. "Murdered? How is that possible? And why?" The disbelief and shock were evident in every word. Margot clasped her trembling hands together and explained, her voice heavy with remorse. "Your parents were more than just business executives. Their company was involved in far more dangerous dealings than you ever knew. There was a conspiracy involving corrupt business partners, powerful people who wanted control of everything. When your parents found out, they tried to get out, but they paid the price." Adam could barely breathe. Everything he thought he knew about his parents and the legacy they had left him was crumbling. The success story of his parents, told by so many over the years, now seemed like a facade for something much darker. "And why didn't anyone tell me this before? How has this been hidden for so long?" Margot lowered her head. "I knew, Adam. I knew because before she died, your mother told me. She trusted me, and I promised I would protect you. She begged me not to let you get involved in this web of corruption and danger. I should have told you, but at the time, I thought silence was the only way to keep you safe." The weight of the revelation was overwhelming. Adam had always idealized his parents as figures of success, But now he was discovering that they had been trapped in something much larger and more dangerous. And the fact that Margot had known all along, that she had carried this burden alone, left him torn between anger and compassion. "Why now, Margot?" he asked, a mix of pain and confusion in his voice. "Why are you only telling me this now?" She lifted her gaze, tears welling up in her tired eyes. "Because, Adam, you came to me. For years, I tried to convince myself that you'd be better off without this truth, that you could live your life without the weight of what happened. But now I know I can't hide it anymore. You deserve to know the truth, to clear your family's name if that's what you want." Adam felt a whirlwind of emotions. The anger of being kept in the dark for so many years, the pain of having lost his parents so brutally. But also, a new resolve was growing inside him. He had always felt something was missing, and now, with this revelation, he knew what he had to do: clear his family's name and confront those who had orchestrated their deaths. "I need to know more, Margot. Who's behind this? Who did this to them?" Adam's determination was palpable. Margot hesitated again, as if more secrets were about to be unearthed. "There's a man, someone very powerful, who operated from the shadows. He has connections with influential people both here and in Westlake. His name is Nathaniel Price. He was your parents' partner, and he's the one who orchestrated everything." The name made Adam shudder. Nathaniel Price was a name he had heard on several occasions, a financial mogul who had become an even more powerful figure over the years. But he never could have imagined that this man was connected to his parents' death. Now Adam knew that his search for answers was only just beginning. Margot sighed deeply, as if weary from the decades of secrets that had gnawed at her. "He's ruthless, Adam. His influence reaches far beyond what you can imagine. He had allies in your parents' company, people in key positions who made sure the official story, the plane crash, was the only one told. And those who dared to dig deeper or tried to tell the truth were silenced, one way or another." Adam abruptly stood, pacing around the cabin. The feeling of helplessness consumed him, but at the same time his determination only grew stronger. He had spent so much time without answers, so much time trying to make sense of the emptiness he felt. Now he finally knew what had really happened, and he couldn't just ignore it. Nathaniel Price was a powerful man, but Adam had his own resources. He had built a tech empire in Westlake, had contacts, and above all, he had the motivation to expose the whole truth. "I'm not going to let him go unpunished, Margot," Adam said, stopping his pacing and looking at her firmly. "My parents died because of him. I can't let this stay buried. I need proof, something that ties him directly to the conspiracy." Margot, who seemed resigned to living with these secrets for the rest of her life, now looked at Adam with a mixture of hope and fear. "Are you sure you want to go down this path? Nathaniel won't let you get that far without a fight. He's even more ruthless than you can imagine." Adam nodded. "I've spent my entire life living in the shadow of what happened. I don't have a choice. I need to do this." Margot remained silent for a moment. Then, as if making a difficult decision, she stood from her chair and walked to a small drawer in an old cabinet. With trembling hands, she opened the drawer and took out a yellowed envelope, which looked like it had been hidden there for years. "This is all I have," Margot said, handing the envelope to Adam. "When your mother found out about the conspiracy and knew her days were numbered, she gave me these documents. She said I should keep them secret, that they were too dangerous in the wrong hand. But now, I think you need them more than I do." Adam took the envelope, feeling the weight of decades of hidden truth. Inside, he found old contracts signed by his parents and Nathaniel Price, clearly showing the involvement of the Rivers family in business ventures that, at first glance, seemed legitimate, but on closer inspection revealed evidence of fraud, stock manipulation, and ties to criminal activities. They were proof that Nathaniel had not only been involved in his parents' business, but had also entangled them in dangerous and illegal schemes. As Adam sifted through the documents, he realized there was more than just financial evidence. A handwritten letter caught his attention. It was from his mother. She had left a note for Margot, instructing her on what to do if something happened to her and her husband. The letter described his mother's fears about Nathaniel, how he was increasingly involved in illicit activities, and how she feared he was plotting something against them. With the letter in his hands, Adam felt a chill run down his spine. He now had the proof that could destroy Nathaniel, but he also understood that by doing so, he would be putting himself directly in the path of a man who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate him. "With these documents, you can finally expose Nathaniel," Margot said, her voice weak but hopeful. "But I fear for what this could mean for you. He has resources, Adam. He'll fight with everything he's got to keep control." Adam carefully closed the envelope, his eyes fixed on the horizon outside the cabin window. He knew he was getting involved in something dangerous, but he also knew that, for the first time, he was ready to face this battle. He was no longer afraid of the past. What mattered most now was justice, and he would do whatever it took to clear his parents' name and tear down the web of lies and corruption Nathaniel Price had built. "I won't stop until he pays for what he's done," Adam said, his voice filled with unshakable resolve. "I'm not alone, Margot. I have contacts, and now I have this proof. He won't escape." Margot nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "I know you're strong, Adam. Just promise me you'll be careful. I don't want to lose you too." With the envelope secure in his hands, Adam knew this journey was just beginning, and the confrontation with Nathaniel Price would be the ultimate test of his determination. Back in Westlake, the contrast between Margot's secluded cabin and the bustling city made Adam reflect on the path he had taken. The journey to Riverdale was just the start. Now, with the truth revealed, he would have to face a powerful enemy, shielded by layers of influence and corruption. Nathaniel Price was a relentless adversary, and every move Adam made would need to be carefully planned. Back at his modern mansion, Adam spent days analyzing the documents his mother had left behind. He knew that simply exposing the evidence to the public or the press would be risky. Nathaniel had allies in every sphere: politics, law enforcement, and even the corporate world. Any reckless move could alert Nathaniel and put Adam directly in the magnate's crosshairs. He needed a strategy, and he knew he couldn't act alone. That's when Adam decided to trust his contact. He had influential friends in the tech sector and the media, people with whom he had built relationships of trust over the course of his career. One of those friends, an old colleague named Alex Carter, was an investigative journalist for one of the most respected news networks in the United States. If anyone could help him safely bring the evidence to light, it was Alex. They met discreetly at a cafe on the outskirts of the city. Adam showed Alex the documents, explaining the whole truth about his parents' death and Nathaniel Price's involvement. Alex was visibly shocked. He knew Nathaniel was a powerful figure, but he hadn't imagined the corruption and murder ran this deep. "This is huge, Adam," Alex said, as he leafed through the contracts and Adam's mother's letter. "If we can validate all this information, you have what it takes to bring Nathaniel down. But you have to know, if this hits the press, he'll react, and he'll react fast." Adam nodded, already prepared for the war that was coming. "I know, Alex. But he can't keep hiding behind his connections. He murdered my parents, and there are other people involved in this scheme. We need to expose everything." Alex agreed, but suggested caution. "We'll do this the right way. We need to build a solid investigation. That means interviewing people who are still alive, cross-referencing the data with other sources, and most importantly, ensuring the safety of the witnesses. I'll start investigating quietly and gathering background information. Once we have the full picture, we'll blow this story wide open. But in the meantime, you need to be careful." Adam knew he couldn't underestimate Nathaniel, so he followed Alex's advice. At the same time, he began reinforcing his own security. He hired experts to protect his communications and assembled a private security team to accompany him in the coming days. Nathaniel Price was known for making enemies disappear, and Adam was determined not to become one of his victims. Meanwhile, Nathaniel began to grow suspicious. The information network he maintained in Westlake was extensive, and soon his informants began reporting Adam's movements. Upon learning that Adam was digging into his parents' past and revisiting old business deals, Nathaniel quickly realized that his perfect facade was under threat. In the luxurious penthouse where Nathaniel operated, he studied every detail of the recent developments. The magnate was not the kind of man to leave loose ends, and now that Adam seemed to have uncovered the truth, he knew he had to act. Nathaniel's cold gaze showed no fear, only determination. He was willing to protect his empire at any cost. That same night, one of Nathaniel's men, a henchman named Logan, was tasked with sending a message to Adam. Nathaniel knew that a simple threat would be enough to shake Adam's confidence and slow his progress. If necessary, the full force would come later. As Alex continued his investigation and gathered testimony from former associates of Adam's parents, the tension in Adam's life grew more intense. He knew he was being watched. The discreet cars parked on the street outside his house and the attentive glances that followed him at social events confirmed his suspicions. Nathaniel was prepared to fight, and Adam had to stay one step ahead. The tension culminated in an unexpected event. One night, as Adam was preparing to leave his house, he received a call from an unknown number. When he answered, a deep, threatening voice echoed from the other end of the line. "You think you can mess with someone like Nathaniel Price and walk away unscathed? This won't end well for you. Get out while you still can." Adam hung up the phone, feeling the very real and imminent threat. But instead of backing down, the intimidation only strengthened his resolve. If Nathaniel was trying to scare him, it meant he was close to something big. For the first time, Adam felt that the final battle between him and the man who destroyed his family was about to begin. He would not give up. Nathaniel Price had to fall, and Adam would do whatever it took to make that happen. The threat received over the phone that night had the opposite effect than expected. Rather than intimidating Adam, it only reinforced his determination to move forward with the plan to expose Nathaniel Price and clear his family's name. The anger he had carried for so many years of pain and abandonment was now turning into strength and focus. He knew that from this moment on, the fight would become more intense, but he was prepared. In the following days, Adam doubled his precautions. He made sure that Alex, his journalist friend, kept a low profile during the investigation. They knew Nathaniel had eyes and ears in many places, so security was a priority. At the same time, Adam began reviewing his own strategies. He knew he couldn't rely solely on the evidence left by his mother. He needed more witnesses. It was time to face the past directly. Adam decided to contact former employees and associates of his parents, people who, for some reason, had distanced themselves after their deaths, and who might be afraid or resentful of Nathaniel, but who possibly knew more than they were willing to admit publicly. He started with those who had left the company shortly after the tragedy, believing there might be more there. One of these people was Elizabeth Drake, a former CFO of his family's business. Elizabeth was an extremely intelligent and cautious woman who had always kept her business dealings out of the spotlight. After Adam's parents died, she withdrew from the market and moved to a small town in the mountains. For years, she had remained silent about everything she knew, afraid that speaking out could bring dangerous consequences. When Adam found her in a modest house surrounded by trees, Elizabeth seemed wary. Initially, she hesitated to receive him, but after hearing what he had to say and realizing that Adam was not just seeking revenge, but justice, Elizabeth finally decided to talk. "What you're about to face is much bigger than you can imagine, Adam," Elizabeth said, serving him a cup of tea. "I left the company because I saw the signs. Nathaniel began infiltrating your family's business in an insidious way. He gained your parents' trust, but it was always a calculated move. When they discovered that Nathaniel was involved in fraud and corruption, it was too late. He was ready to silence them." Adam listened carefully as Elizabeth recalled the last few months leading up to his parents' deaths. There were secret meetings, contracts your parents would never have approved if they knew all the detail. When your father started questioning Nathaniel's practices, things quickly became dangerous. He tried to get Nathaniel out of the company, but Nathaniel already had too. The end came swiftly. Elizabeth was clearly nervous telling this story, and Adam understood why. He knew that the deeper he dug, the more dangerous things would become, not just for him, but for everyone involved in exposing Nathaniel. But Elizabeth, perhaps tired of carrying so many secrets, handed Adam a new piece of evidence: copies of financial documents showing the fraud and embezzlement orchestrated by Nathaniel, along with emails between him and his accomplices detailing how to keep every. "I kept these documents because I knew one day someone would come looking for the truth," Elizabeth said with a serious look. "Nathaniel is dangerous, but you have more than a chance now. And Adam, please be careful. He won't hesitate to take you out if he thinks you're a real threat." With this new evidence, Adam began building a solid web of information. He and Alex spent weeks cross-referencing data, connecting the dots between Elizabeth's documents, his mother's original contracts, and interviews with former associates and employees. The puzzle was nearly complete, and Nathaniel was starting to feel the pressure. As Adam advanced, Nathaniel's moves became more aggressive. Small threats turned more concrete. Adam's safety was tested when he nearly had a car accident. The brakes had been sabotaged. He knew it was a warning, but it only strengthens. He hired a larger security team and started living more discreetly, avoiding unnecessary public appearances. While Alex prepared the dossier for press release, Adam felt the pressure mounting. The tension was palpable, and each day seemed closer to the inevitable showdown. He knew Nathaniel wouldn't wait until the evidence was published. He would act first. It was only a matter of time before the full force of the attack came. But in the midst of all this, Adam was also growing. Throughout the process, he realized that although the void he had carried since childhood was still there, he was now filling it with purpose. He was no longer just trying to heal an emotional wound. Now, he was fighting for justice. He was fighting to honor his parents' legacy, to protect those who had been wronged, and to ensure Nathaniel no longer acted with impunity. Amid this battle, Adam also rebuilt his relationship with Margot. They stayed in constant contact, and Margot, though still fragile from the difficult years, offered him the emotional support he had long needed. Through his conversations with her, Adam realized that true family was made of love and sacrifice, something Margot had always given him, even from a distance. Finally, Adam was prepared. The dossier was complete, the evidence ready, and the final confrontation with Nathaniel loomed. He knew the coming days would be the most dangerous of his life, but for the first time in a long while, he was in control of his own story. The days leading up to the final confrontation were filled with tension. Adam knew there was no turning back. Everything he and Alex had gathered was about to come to light, meaning Nathaniel Price's name would finally be exposed to the world. Along with this revelation, however, would come the inevitable retaliation attempts. He could not ignore that he was dealing with a powerful man with near unlimited resources who had already shown his willingness to eliminate anyone who crossed his path. Adam meticulously planned with Alex and his security team, taking every possible measure to ensure the investigation's release was done safely. The dossier would be sent simultaneously to several major media outlets, preventing Nathaniel from intercepting or suppressing the story. The investigation was detailed, with damning evidence linking Nathaniel not only to Adam's parents' deaths, but also to a vast network of corporate fraud, money laundering, and even the bribery of political figures. As Alex added the final touches to the dossier, Adam knew the storm was about to break. Nathaniel wouldn't stand idly by, and Adam had to be ready. But for the first time, he felt prepared for the fight ahead, ready to expose the truth, no matter the cost. That same night, Adam decided to act. The release of the dossier was scheduled for the early hours of the following morning. Alex's team had ensured that everything was ready for mass distribution across various news networks, with digital security impervious to interference. Alex had also secured the cooperation of other investigative journalists, ready to provide coverage when the case was revealed. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Adam spent that final night on high alert, knowing that Nathaniel would make his final move before everything came to light. He had left his home and moved to a secure, undisclosed location where he could monitor the report's launch without being tracked. All he could do now was wait and prepare. Each second felt like an eternity. Every sound seemed more threatening, and Adam knew that at any moment, a direct confrontation with Nathaniel could occur. Tension filled the air, and both Adam and his security team were aware that once the dossier went public, there would be no turning back. Finally, as night began to give way to dawn, Adam received a message from Alex. "We're ready. Let's do this." It was the beginning of the end for Nathaniel Price, but Adam knew that the real battle was just starting. He was about to take down a corrupt empire, but he also understood that Nathaniel wouldn't go down easily. The final move was in sight, and Adam would need all the strength and courage he had to face the climax of this fight for the past and the truth. At 6 a.m., the dossier was released. The world woke up to an explosive report detailing years of corruption, manipulation, and fraud orchestrated by Nathaniel Price. The most influential news channels, newspapers, and even social media were flooded with the carefully investigated information collected by Adam and Alex. It was a meticulously planned move. The evidence was accompanied by anonymous interviews with former associates, financial documents, fraudulent contracts, and, most devastating of all, a letter from Adam's mother proving she feared for her life before she was murdered. The effect was immediate. Within hours, Nathaniel Price's name was in ever. The press, already eagerly awaiting the explosion of the case, dove into the details and began pressuring political and business figures connected to Nathaniel. In the eye of this storm, Adam watched it all unfold with a mix of relief and tension. He had done what he set out to do, expose the truth. But now came the most dangerous part, facing the direct consequences. Soon after the publication, Nathaniel Price vanished from the spotlight. His lawyers tried to control the narrative, calling the accusations baseless and claiming the evidence was fabricated. But the damage was done. Public opinion quickly turned against Nathaniel, and powerful figures who once supported him began distancing themselves, fearing they would be dragged into the scandal. But Adam knew Nathaniel wasn't the kind of man to flee without a fight. He was waiting for something. And indeed, while the press and lawyers battled it out in the public arena, Nathaniel was quietly preparing his own retaliation. That same morning, while Adam and his security team monitored the fallout from the report, a series of terrifyingly synchronized events began to unfold. First, Adam's communications started to fail. The secure channels he and Alex had set up were hacked. Emails were deleted, documents vanished, and Alex frantically called to warn that they were under massive cyber attack. Nathaniel clearly was playing dirty. Then, the unthinkable happened. Armed men stormed the safe house where Adam was hiding. Despite the security team being prepared, the attack was swift and lethal. The sound of gunfire echoed through the halls, and Adam, caught off guard, found himself facing the most dangerous attack he had ever encountered. Nathaniel had made it clear that if he couldn't control the narrative, he would destroy everything around him, and that included Adam. Running through the corridors as the security team fought off the attackers, Adam knew he didn't have much time. He had to escape before it was too late. His body was pulsing with adrenaline as he searched for a way out. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, and he could hear the shouts of his team trying to protect his life. As he raced for the exit, Adam was hit by one of the gunmen. A sharp pain shot through his right shoulder, but he managed to keep going, dragging himself to a side door that led to a safer area. Outside, the remaining security guards helped him escape in a waiting car. Even injured, Adam knew he had to stay focused. He had to survive, not just for himself, but to ensure that the truth prevailed. Realizing that his attempt to eliminate Adam had failed, Nathaniel changed tactics. Shortly after the attack, he held a press conference, making his first public appearance since the scandal broke. In a calculated tone, and with his usual air of superiority, he tried to discredit Adam. He claimed the accusations were a personal vendetta, and that Adam was manipulating the information to destroy his reputation. To those unfamiliar with the truth, Nathaniel almost seemed sincere, even convincing. But the evidence against him was undeniable. From the hospital where he had been taken after the attack, Adam followed every step closely. He knew this was Nathaniel's last-ditch effort to protect himself, a desperate move to save what was left of his empire. But Adam also knew that at this point, there was no escaping. The evidence was out, and with each passing day, more details emerged about Nathaniel's involvement in both past and present crimes. As Nathaniel publicly fought to clear his image, law enforcement began to move. The FBI and other authorities had been silently investigating the magnate since the morning of the report's publication. Within days, arrest warrants were issued, and a federal operation was set in motion to apprehend Nathaniel and his accomplices. The decisive moment came on a sweltering night when federal agents surrounded Nathaniel Price's luxurious penthouse atop one of Westlake's tallest buildings. Knowing the noose was tightening, Nathaniel tried to flee on a private jet but was intercepted. The final confrontation was not dramatic. He was arrested without resistance, his face as cold and calculating as ever, but now clearly defeated. His mask of power had finally fallen. When the news of Nathaniel's arrest reached the hospital, Adam felt a tremendous weight lift off his shoulders. He had won the battle. Despite all the hardships, the attacks, the losses, and the threats, he had succeeded. Nathaniel Price, the man who had destroyed his family, was now in the hands of justice. Alex, who had been by Adam's side throughout the entire ordeal, visited him at the hospital. "You did it, Adam," he said with a tired but relieved smile. "Nathaniel is finished." Adam, still recovering from his injury, nodded slowly. He knew there was a long road ahead, both physically and emotionally. But in that moment, he could finally breathe easy. The truth had come to light, justice was being served, and the emptiness that had haunted him for so long was slowly starting to fade. Adam's victory wasn't just over Nathaniel Price, but over the ghost of his past. With the man responsible for his parents' deaths finally behind bars and the truth revealed to the world, he felt a sense of relief he never thought possible. Though the physical and emotional scars still ran deep, Adam knew his life had changed forever. The days following Nathaniel's arrest were intense. The media couldn't stop covering the scandal, and new investigations kept uncovering the extent of Nathaniel's corruption and that of his accomplices. With each new revelation, Adam felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction for having fulfilled his promise to expose the truth, and sadness for the lives Nathaniel had ruined in the process, including his parents. Adam spent a few weeks in the hospital recovering from the gunshot wound he'd suffered during the attack. During that time, he had a chance to reflect on everything that had happened. Margot visited him regularly, and their conversations grew more intimate, as if the bond they'd formed in childhood was strengthening. Margot had always been a maternal figure to him, and now, more than ever, she represented the emotional stability Adam needed to move forward. "Your parents would be proud of you, Adam," Margot said during one of her visits. "You went above and beyond to clear their names and bring justice." Adam smiled, still feeling the weight of the battle, but with a lighter heart. "I couldn't have done it without you, Margot. If it weren't for everything you told me, for all the support you gave me, I wouldn't have had the courage to keep going." They sat in silence for a moment, appreciating the quiet after the storm. Margot had become more than just a memory from his childhood. Now she was part of this new chapter in Adam's life, and he intended to ensure she had the support she needed to live with dignity after so many years of hardship. With Nathaniel behind bars, a long legal process awaited, but Adam no longer had to carry the burden of fighting alone. The authorities and the press would handle the rest, and he could finally begin to rebuild his life. The trauma of losing his parents and the years of emptiness would still be with him, but now there was a sense of purpose filling that space. Westlake, with its gleaming skyscrapers and waves crashing against the rocks, was still the same bustling city it had always been. But for Adam, something fundamental had changed. He was no longer the man who carried a nameless void. He had found answers, fought for justice, and, above all, rediscovered what truly mattered in life: human connection. At last, Adam could leave the past behind and look toward the future with hope. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to keep up with our moving and inspiring stories. And don't go just yet. Click on the next video showing up here on the screen and keep getting touched by more stories. See you in the next video.